In the middle of this week's parashah, the Sforno notes that Sefer Bamidbar is not in chronological order. In fact, the very first 10 prakim, the 10 chapters, he explains, are all about the things that the Jews got right in the desert. The Ratzon Lifnei Hashem, the way they traveled, the way they encamped, the way they brought their gifts for the Mishkan, and even the way they celebrated the very first Pesach in the desert. But then, right at the beginning of Perek Yud Aleph, things changed as the first of a seemingly endless litany of challenges arose. Vayehi am kemit onanim. The people were like complainers, and as a result, within just a few words of a single sentence, HaKadosh Baruch Hu punished them severely, even though the Torah doesn't reveal, nor can Chazal agree upon what their sin really was. All we know is the way the Torah describes them. Vayehi ha'am kemit onanim. They were like complainers. And I can't understand. After all, in my experience, people who are like complainers are complainers. Even those who get upset by complainers and complain about them are complainers. But then, compounding the mystery of it all, there's the next group, the Asafsuf, a mob of not so admirable people, perhaps the Erev Rav, perhaps some other group, who again, we don't know, but this time, what we do know is what they complained about. They began to cry, as the Bechor Shor described, like babies, pining for the fish, zacharnu et hadagam, and the vegetables and the fruits that they ate for free in Egypt, all of which was an absurd and obscene claim, since the only reason things were free in Egypt was because they were enslaved. But front and center, they complained about the meat. Mi yachlenu basar. Who will feed us meat, they said, despite the flocks and the cattle that accompanied them in the desert, and despite the manna, which satisfied their hunger. They had so much. And yet this Asafsuf, they also complained. Why? And why would the Torah keep things so obtuse, hide their identities and even some of their sins? Perhaps the reason is because they were not unique. Maybe the reason is that at least in some way, their behaviors, their cries, and their complaints can still appear in our time. And to find that truth, there is one more enigma to consider. Because as often happens, if you compound the mysteries, you can solve the problems, which is the motivator of the Asafsuf. What the Torah describes as hitavu ta'ava, which literally means that they craved a craving. But since a craving doesn't really make sense, the way it's typically translated is they craved a great or a gluttonous craving. But still, that's not what the Chumash says. The Chumash says that they craved a craving. Said the Ralbag that the problem with the Jews was that they were so well taken care of, they didn't need anything at all. Therefore, shelo nit'avu al davar hechrechi lehem im lo l'redifat ha'ta'avam. The only thing that they were missing was wanting things. You see, we think that if you satisfy all of the needs of human beings, that they'll be satisfied. But the truth is that if that happens, human nature pushes us to just cast around for something else that we don't have. Because people want to want. Even if they have everything they need, that's our nature. And so when they couldn't figure out what they could complain about, hit'avu ta'avam, they complained that they had nothing to complain about. They had the man from heaven. They had God's protection. They were delivered from slavery. They were on their way to Eretz Yisrael, the promised land, but they wanted to complain. And that too is why the Torah referred to them as kimit onanim. Since they didn't have a real complaint, they were kimit onanim, like complainers, which is the lesson we can learn. Because we live in an era when we have so much, and we can do so much, when the standard of living of our community has grown beyond our wildest dreams, and the opportunities in life seem endless. And yet the more we have, the more we seem to want. And the things that were once luxuries have become standards, and the luxuries we enjoy are changing who we are. And what the Torah is teaching us is to step back and ask ourselves, are we mit onanim or kim mit onanim? Are we complaining about the conditions of the world or the conditions of our souls? Are our priorities authentic and founded in the principles of Torah, or are our priorities created and ever-changing, which in a strange way has been a benefit of this pandemic, as we've been forced to stay at home and take stock of what is truly important. For many who have found themselves surrounded by family, it's the opportunity to eat meals together, to find things to do together on Shabbos, and even to daven together. For others, it's understanding how much we miss our friends and our social interactions. And it's the joy of just taking a walk, reading a book, or helping another. For us, who have been away from shul for so long, it's remembering how much our shuls are part of who we are, how much our shuls create our communities and create our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a wonderful exercise that many teachers do. They go up to a blank white wall and put a small little dot in the center. And then they ask their students to write down on a piece of paper, what do you now see? And each time they do it, almost everyone says, we see a black dot. But that's not really what's there. What's really there is a large blank wall with a tiny little black dot. We need to step back and see the wall, see the big picture, and understand that so much is good in our lives, even in this time of danger. We need to step back and be grateful for all that we have and not complain about the small dot or the desire for something in life that we really don't need. Of course, sometimes there are genuine tragedies and deep sadnesses, and I don't want to minimize any of those. But a lot of what we yearn for, a lot of what we complain about, our complaints kimit onanim. They're complaints of life, of what we imagine, and not what is real. And so the next time you find yourself dissatisfied, complaining about something, take a step back. Count your blessings first, and then ask yourself, is what you're complaining about just the meat instead of the heavenly man? Is what you're complaining about your wants instead of your needs? Is it a craving instead of a necessity? And how you answer those questions will ultimately prove who you truly are. Shabbat Shalom.